Good day, and welcome to the Sussex Files, the channel where we open the case, follow the evidence, and say the things that the mainstream media is far too polite or far too paid to say. Today we are starting with a new series, and you are fortunate to assist in its very beginning. Now let's begin from the very start. Not with the Oprah interview, not with the Netflix documentary, not with the memoir that managed to insult an entire monarchy in 416 pages. No. We are starting with the question that explains all of those things. How do you take a prince, a man with wealth, privilege, a globally recognized name, and an entire nation's goodwill, and turn him into someone who would burn every single one of those things to the ground? How does that happen? Because it did not happen by accident. And once you see exactly how it was done, you will never look at the Sussex saga the same way again. This is EP1 of the Sussex Files. We are calling it the Spare Trap. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand that Harry was not a rebel. He was a target. A very specific, very readable, very exploitable target. And somebody read him perfectly. Now before we go any further, if you are new here, welcome. We do not do gossip on this channel. We do not do rumors. We do forensic analysis of the most calculated royal exit in modern history, and we back every single claim with evidence. We are building something here, and we are trying to hit 500 subscribers in 2 weeks. If this is the kind of content that makes you lean forward in your seat, then hit that subscribe button right now and smash that notification bell. Because what is coming in the next few episodes is going to be even more explosive than this, and you do not want to be the last person to find out. Subscribe. Click the bell. Now let us get in.
Well, Raj, first, if I can ask you, I mean, do you feel this guy has got some kind of psychiatric problems?
Well, you may be an amateur, but I think you're being psychologically very astute. I thought it was an extraordinary interview, and I think he may have been ill-advised to give the interview so soon after the court case, because it was clear to anyone watching it that he was kind of reeling in shock. And therefore, I was interested in watching it because I'm interested in helping people learn to adjust and cope with life's difficulties. And I thought it was an object lesson in coping with loss, because he just had a loss and he has had a series of losses, but in a way it was an object lesson in how not to cope with loss, basically. And you said that you think that he's finally accepted. I'm not sure I agree with you on that point. I mean, he spent the whole interview rehashing the arguments again and again and again in a rather repetitive nature. So many people would argue he's still obviously in denial that he'd lost. He was reeling in shock. He didn't actually, in a way, accept. And in repetitively restating the argument, it was almost like he thought there was a chance someone out there's listening to him and will reverse the decision. So I thought one of the first things you've got to do when you're coping with loss is task one is accept the reality of the loss. And I'm not sure we saw that. And I'm not sure whether Harry has, I mean, I think many people would say, and again, I'm more interested in helping people cope with loss than necessarily psychoanalyzing Harry. I think many people would say someone who's led the kind of life he's had is going to struggle when it comes to coping with loss, yet life is a series often of losses and difficulties, and we have to learn to adjust
To it. Here is what you need to understand about Harry before you can understand anything else. He grew up in one of the most image-conscious, emotionally repressed institutions on the planet, carrying a label that was assigned to him at birth and never once questioned. The spare, second son, second in line, second in everything. His entire existence within the royal family was defined not by who he was, but by what he was not. He was not the heir. He was the backup. And in case you think that is a minor psychological inconvenience, it is not. Attachment theory, the foundational framework developed by British psychiatrist John Bowlby, tells us that a child's sense of identity is built on feeling consistently seen and valued. Harry was not seen as an individual. He was seen as insurance. And children who grow up that way do not simply shrug and move on. They develop what psychologists call role deprivation, a chronic, aching need to feel chosen, specifically chosen, deliberately chosen, chosen above everyone else. That need does not fade with age. It grows, and it makes a person dangerously easy to manipulate if the right individual comes along and knows exactly which buttons to press. But wait, because it gets worse. Layer on top of that foundation the single most traumatic event of Harry's childhood. His mother died when he was 12, and not quietly, not privately. Diana died in a Paris tunnel, chased by photographers, and Harry was then placed in front of the entire world and told to keep walking behind her coffin before he had been given a single moment alone to process what had just happened to him. In his memoir, he describes dissociating during that walk, going somewhere else entirely in his mind just to survive it. Trauma specialists would recognize that immediately. It is what an overwhelmed nervous system does when reality becomes too much to inhabit. The grief was never properly processed. It was performed publicly first and buried privately second, which means it was never truly buried at all. It simply went underground. And unprocessed trauma does not stay quiet. It waits. It reorganizes a person from the inside, and it makes them exquisitely sensitive to anyone who offers them what they never received, genuine emotional acknowledgement. Now here is where we stop sympathizing and start investigating. Because this is the Sussex Files, and our job is not to feel sorry for Harry. Our job is to follow the evidence. And the evidence suggests that Harry's psychological profile, the identity vacuum, the unresolved grief, the desperate need to feel chosen, was not just visible to the people around him. It was legible. It was a map. And someone used it. Enter Meghan Markle, an actress who, by 2016, had spent over a decade in Hollywood without breaking through to the level she believed she deserved. She had a lifestyle blog. She had a mid-tier television role. She had ambition that far exceeded her opportunities. And then she was introduced to a prince. A prince who, as we have just established, had a gaping psychological wound where his identity should have been. A prince who had never felt truly chosen. A prince who had watched his mother be destroyed by the institution he belonged to and had spent years quietly resenting it. If you were looking for someone who could be convinced to walk away from the royal family, to see the monarchy not as his heritage but as his oppressor, Harry Windsor was not just a candidate. He was the ideal candidate. He was practically a case study. And the approach, when you examine it with clear eyes, was textbook. In their ITV engagement interview, Harry described the moment he knew Meghan was different. He had been having a difficult week. She asked if he was really okay. Not just fine. Really okay. Harry described this as transformative. And on the surface, yes, it sounds lovely. A woman who actually asks how you are feeling. How refreshing. But let us apply some critical thinking here. Meghan Markle was a grown woman who had navigated the entertainment industry for over a decade. She was not naive about people. She was not unaware of how to make an impression. She knew she was sitting across from a prince with a famously complicated relationship with his family and a famously unprocessed emotional life. And her opening move was to make him feel deeply, specifically, uniquely seen. That is not a coincidence. That is a strategy. Whether it was calculated or instinctive is almost irrelevant. The effect was the same. Harry was hooked. Because for a man whose entire wound was about never being chosen, being seen that deliberately felt like salvation. This is what royal commentator Kinsey Schofield identified when she told Fox News Digital that Harry had essentially traded one hierarchy for another. In the royal family, he was the spare. In Hollywood, he risks becoming the supporting character in Meghan's ambitions. And that observation is sharper than it first appears. Because Harry did not escape a controlling institution. He walked out of one and directly into the orbit of someone with a far more specific agenda. And this time, there was no institution, no protocol, no centuries of tradition to provide any counterweight whatsoever. It was just Harry, his wounds, and Meghan's vision for what their life together was going to look like. And spoiler, that vision required him to be radically, publicly, irreversibly estranged from everything he had ever known. Now let us look at the evidence, because this is where it gets damning. The Archewell Foundation, the Sussex's charitable organization, was incorporated before the ink was even dry on their exit from royal duties. Meetings between Meghan's team and the streaming platform Quibi reportedly took place while they were still functioning as working members of the royal family. The Netflix deal was signed with extraordinary speed after their departure. The Oprah interview, broadcast globally, watched by millions, framed as a deeply personal and reluctant disclosure, was a commercially produced piece of content that aired on primetime American television. The memoir, Spare, was not a private journal. It was a publishing deal worth a reported $20 million, and it contained revelations about Harry's family that were so precise, so pointed, and so damaging that several royal commentators described it as a controlled demolition. Each of these moves, examined in isolation, can perhaps be explained. Examined in sequence, They do not look like the decisions of a wounded man seeking peace and privacy. They look like a business plan. And here is the question that the mainstream media consistently refuses to ask. Who benefited most from each of these decisions? The Oprah interview. Who was positioned as the moral authority, the wronged woman? The Duchess who was failed? The Netflix documentary, whose story was centered, whose narrative dominated, whose production company held the rights? The memoir. Who was portrayed as the enlightened partner who opened Harry's eyes to the toxicity around him? In every single instance, the answer is the same. Harry put his name on all of it. But the architecture of all of it served one person's ambition with remarkable consistency. Harry Windsor is not a sympathetic figure in this analysis. He is a cautionary tale, a man so hungry to feel chosen, so shaped by unresolved wounds, so primed by his own history to distrust the institution around him, that he could not see, or would not see, that he had simply swapped one kind of captivity for another. The royal family constrained him with protocol and tradition and expectation. His life in Montecito constrains him with narrative, with brand, with the relentless commercial necessity of keeping the Sussex story relevant and the Sussex grievance fresh. He did not get free. He got repackaged. And the British public, whose taxes funded his upbringing, whose affection he once genuinely held, and whose patience he has now thoroughly exhausted, they are watching. And they are not impressed. The spare did not spring the trap. He walked into a different one. And in EP2, we find out who built it. We are going back to before Harry. Before the ring, before the romance, before the carefully timed Instagram follows. We are going back to who Meghan Markle actually was. The actress who could not break through, the blog that was quietly deleted, and what royal expert Hilary Fordwich described as a pattern of ending every significant relationship in her life except two. That episode is going to change the way you see this entire story. If you enjoyed today's episode, do us a favor and hit the like button. It costs you nothing and it helps this channel enormously. Subscribe if you have not already. Click that notification bell, and we will see you in EP2. Thank you for watching the Sussex Files. The case is just getting started.